I decided to do my extra assignment 2 over overuse injuries. So an overuse injury is an injury that causes tissue damage, and that tissue damage is caused is because of repeated demand over a period of time. An example would be a stress fracture, so maybe somebody who runs a lot, they may get a stress fracture, or like a baseball pitcher, when he repeatedly does his arm in that motion, he could have tendonitis, and that could just be another example of an overuse injury. So my reason for interest in this is just, for one thing, personal experience. I've played softball my entire life, and I have had some experience with overuse injuries. I've had experience with an overuse injury in my shoulder, where my shoulder just hurt me really bad because I repeatedly threw with it. I've also had an issue with my hip from overuse injuries, and even though I had those overuse injuries, I never really knew exactly like why and how I could prevent it and what I needed to do, so that's why I'm interested. I'm also interested because I plan on working with athletes in the future, and if I can do something to help them to stop it before it happens or help them with their treatment, I would want to do that. So I was interested in looking at overuse injuries in high schoolers because for my future career, I plan on being a teacher, but then also being a softball coach. So I'll be working with people who will be susceptible to these injuries. And so I just wanted to look into it so I could be prepared, maybe to help them or prevent them, or just take action if an overuse injury were to occur in one of my future players. So that's why I'm interested, and that's how it's related to my future career. So what does the research say? I first looked at prevention on the HSS playbook. So 4 ways that you can prevent overuse injuries is adequate rest and recovery, limiting repetitions, proper technique, and then gradual increases. So for the adequate rest and recovery, just making sure they're getting their time that they need after practice or after games, and also just making sure they're getting the nutrition that they need as well. For limiting repetitions, an example of that would just be just like a pitch count for a baseball player. That's a way to limit repetitions. For proper technique, that's just like making sure that my players have the proper throwing techniques, other things that they be doing, just make sure they have the proper technique for, as well as just gradual increases. So those gradual increases, just like making sure that you're increasing the amount of time playing and practicing gradually, that you're not just jumping right into something, that you're giving them time to just do it little by little and building up to it. So I looked at a research study, and the study was done on students from 5 different high schools. They took a survey, and the survey was to see if they had experienced overuse injuries, as well as what sports they had participated in. So what we saw or what the researchers saw, was that athletes who played sports the entire year saw a 42% increase in risk of getting an overuse injury. So these are athletes who played during all 4 seasons and didn't take any rest. And this was compared to athletes who took even just 1 season off. So if not given time to heal, overuse injuries, they can be seen in tissue that sees repetitive trauma, and muscle fatigue and other weaknesses can be seen with repetitive stress. And then since that repetitive stress causes that muscle fatigue and those other weaknesses, that muscle fatigue and those other weaknesses may predispose the athlete to an overuse injury. So really what I saw from this research is that for my future job, what I can do to help is that I can just make sure that my athletes have the adequate rest time and they have the adequate recovery that they need. And then I can also make sure they're not playing year round, they're taking that time off that they need to take off. So these are my references for just what is an overuse injury, an example of an overuse injury, and then the prevention of overuse injuries. I use just the HSS playbook. And then for my research study that talked about the high school athletes and their overuse injuries, I used a study called Overuse Injuries in High School Athletes. Through this research, I was able to learn more about overuse injuries, more about what they are. Even though I've already had personal experience with it, I was able to learn more about it, which will help me personally, but can also just help me with my athletes in the future. So I was just able to find out more about it and what I can do.